Every 11 seconds, a senior in the United States is admitted to the emergency room due to a fall. And do you know what many doctors have started to trace these falls back to, especially in men? Sudden drops in blood pressure, heart palpitations, and dizziness, triggered not during exercise or walking, but during intimacy. And yes, that includes solo intimacy, or what we commonly call masturbation. I know that might surprise you, or maybe it doesn't. Because deep down, perhaps you've started noticing the subtle changes in your body. A heart that beats faster than it should, a breath that feels just slightly too shallow, or a fatigue that doesn't make sense after something that once felt so natural and rejuvenating. This is not about shame, and it's certainly not about telling you to stop something that may still bring you comfort, relief, or even a sense of connection to yourself. No. This is about understanding what's happening inside your aging body and learning how to protect it before something small turns into something serious. Over the next few minutes, we're going to gently unpack three things. First, we'll look at the physical strain that even pleasurable acts can place on an aging heart and vascular system, especially when done at the wrong time of day. Then, we'll explore how certain medications or underlying health conditions can quietly turn a private habit into a health risk. And finally, I'll share the story of one of my patients, George, 74, whose sudden collapse one morning taught me a lesson I never forgot. But before we begin, let me ask you something. Have you ever felt a strange sense of fatigue or dizziness after masturbating and just brushed it off as age? Or maybe a slight pain in the chest that passed in seconds? Most seniors never mention these things to their doctor, and that silence could be dangerous. So take a breath. This video is not here to frighten you. It's here to inform, to empower, and maybe even help you rediscover a healthier, safer, and more meaningful relationship with your own body. Because the truth is, after 70, everything shifts. The heart pumps slower, the blood vessels stiffen, the nervous system becomes more sensitive to drops and surges, and what used to be harmless can become risky. Not always, but sometimes. And that's what we're here to explore. Gently, respectfully, and with the wisdom of years. So stay with me. What you're about to hear may just save you from a silent mistake you didn't know you were making. Now, before we dive into the first factor that can turn a pleasurable habit into a potential danger, I want to ask you this. When was the last time you asked your doctor whether your current medications affect your sexual function? Most people never do. But what if I told you that certain blood pressure medications, or even over-the-counter sleep aids, could be contributing to a higher risk of post-orgasmic blood pressure crashes? We'll get into all of that. But first, I want you to meet George. He's 74, widowed, lives alone, and for the most part, he's healthy, walks every morning, keeps his mind sharp with puzzles, eats decently well. But one morning, George woke up around 5:30 a.m. The sun was just coming up. He felt calm, reflective. As part of his routine, he chose to spend a few private moments alone, something he's done for decades without a second thought. But this time, something felt off. As he stood up from bed, his knees buckled, his vision blurred. Within seconds, he was on the ground, confused, heart racing, and unable to catch his breath. It wasn't a heart attack, it wasn't a stroke, but it was something serious, something called post-orgasmic hypotension, exacerbated by a combination of his age, the time of day, and his current heart medication. He didn't know, and truthfully, neither did many doctors till cases like George started coming in. That's why this video exists. Because if George had known just one thing about the way blood vessels react after 70, he might have made one small change that could have prevented that fall, that ambulance ride, and that week in the hospital. So let's begin. But before we do, if you find value in this kind of honest, respectful, and health-centered conversation, please consider sharing this video with someone you care about. You never know who might be facing the same questions in silence. Now, let's talk about the first silent mistake older adults make during solo intimacy, and how it starts not in the bedroom, but in the timing. Mistake 1. Doing it too early in the day. George didn't know that morning orgasms could be risky after 70. No one had told him. Not his cardiologist, not his pharmacist, not even the articles he occasionally skimmed about healthy aging. But science has known this for a while. As we grow older, our bodies become more vulnerable to natural shifts in blood pressure, especially in the early hours of the morning, between 4 a.m. and 10 a.m. The body undergoes what doctors call a sympathetic surge. It's nature's way of preparing us to wake up, to move, to function. Hormones like cortisol and adrenaline spike. The heart beats faster, blood vessels constrict, blood pressure rises. For a younger adult, this is manageable. The heart is still flexible. The arteries respond quickly. But for someone over 70, especially with high blood pressure or any history of heart disease, this natural rise can be dangerous when paired with sudden physical exertion, even in the form of self-pleasure. During climax, the heart rate spikes, blood vessels dilate and then constrict, muscles tense, then release. Blood pressure may drop suddenly right after orgasm, and when that happens during an already unstable period, the body may not recover quickly enough. That's exactly what happened to George. He was standing. He hadn't eaten yet. He was slightly dehydrated from the night, and without realizing it, his post-orgasmic blood pressure dipped sharply. Not because he did something wrong, but because he did something at the wrong time. When we spoke, I asked George a question I now ask all my patients over 65. Do you feel more lightheaded after intimate moments in the morning than in the afternoon or evening? His answer was yes. And he wasn't alone. More and more older adults, especially men, experience what's now being quietly acknowledged in geriatric clinics. Post-orgasmic hypotension. Most noticeable when it happens during the body's most volatile window. That doesn't mean intimacy in the morning must be avoided forever, but it does mean awareness matters. If you are over 70, and especially if you take medications for blood pressure, heart rhythm, or diuretics, it is crucial to listen to your body's signals. Waking up dehydrated, hungry, and already on medication that affects your vascular tone, that's a perfect storm. George and I worked on a plan. He moved his private time to early afternoon, after lunch and hydration. He also started warming up his body with light stretches before any physical activity, even solo pleasure. And he never stands up immediately after. He takes 5 minutes, breathes deeply, and gives his body the time it needs to stabilize. A simple shift. But it changed everything. What if no one had told him? That's why you're here. And maybe you've noticed the same thing, a strange fatigue, a mild dizziness, or even a headache after morning pleasure. Don't ignore that. It's not just old age, it's your body speaking. So here's the key takeaway. After 70, it's not just what you do, it's when you do it. Now, before we move on, I want to ask you something deeply personal. Do you know how your current medications interact with your vascular and nervous system during physical exertion? Because our next mistake has everything to do with that. And it's one that almost nobody, especially not doctors, warns you about unless you ask directly. Mistake 2, ignoring medication interactions. It wasn't until his second fall that George finally brought me a list of all the medications he was taking. And when I saw it, something clicked. Lisinopril, amlodipine, tamsulosin, melatonin. Each of them had been prescribed by different specialists over the years. Well-intentioned doctors treating isolated issues, high blood pressure, enlarged prostate, sleep problems. Nothing out of the ordinary for someone in his 70s. But when taken together, especially in the morning, and especially before or after any intimate activity, this cocktail became a hidden danger. Let me explain why. Many medications older adults take are what we call vasodilators. They relax the blood vessels to lower blood pressure. That's helpful for preventing strokes and heart attacks. But when paired with the natural drop in pressure that follows orgasm, it can lead to lightheadedness, blackouts, or even brief loss of consciousness. Then there's tamsulosin, commonly prescribed for urinary symptoms in older men. It's known to cause what's called first-dose hypotension, a sharp drop in blood pressure when you change position, like going from lying down to standing. If you add that to post-orgasm fatigue, you've created the perfect scenario for a collapse. And melatonin, often considered harmless, can amplify drowsiness and reduce alertness, making any sudden dip in blood pressure harder for the body to compensate. George had unknowingly stacked the deck against himself, and he's not alone. In fact, studies from institutions like Harvard and Mayo Clinic now warn that older adults on certain medications face a dramatically higher risk of fall-related injuries during moments of physical exertion, including sexual activity. But here's the problem. No one talks about masturbation in the clinic. It's still seen as taboo, irrelevant, or simply not worth discussing at your age. That silence, that omission, it's what nearly cost George his independence. When we finally reviewed his medications together, we made some simple changes. He took his blood pressure pills later in the morning. After breakfast, he avoided any physical strain, including masturbation, for at least 2 hours after taking tamsulosin. And most importantly, he finally understood that what seemed like an isolated private act could have real, physiological consequences when layered on top of his prescriptions. After a few weeks, he reported something interesting. He felt stronger, not because he changed his habits completely, but because he timed them better, and because he started listening, not just to his desires, but to his body's signals. So if you're over 70 and on medication, any medication that affects your heart, your blood vessels, or your sleep, please ask your doctor. Not just, is this safe? Ask them this: how does this affect my body during or after sexual activity? You deserve to know, because there's nothing shameful about wanting intimacy, but there is something dangerous about silence, especially when your health is on the line. Now, I want to take you even deeper, because even when medication and timing are aligned, there's still one powerful system inside your body that can turn pleasure into panic: your nervous system. And that's what we'll explore next. In fact, the third mistake we'll talk about may be the most overlooked of all, and it's something I call emotional overload. Mistake 3: emotional overload and nervous system shock. When George and I sat down a few weeks after his recovery, I asked him a question that made him pause. Have you ever felt sad or empty after self-pleasure? He looked down for a moment, then slowly nodded. Sometimes I don't know why I even do it anymore. I feel better for a minute, then emptier. That answer, more than his blood pressure or prescriptions, told me something vital, something that far too many people over 70 feel but never say aloud. Because intimacy, at this age, isn't just about the body. It's about memory, longing, grief, isolation. And when these emotions go unspoken, they don't just stay quiet, they turn inward, echoing through the nervous system in ways we're only just beginning to understand. Let's talk about the autonomic nervous system, the part of your body that regulates everything from your heart rate to your digestion. It has two main branches: the sympathetic, which activates in times of stress or arousal, and the parasympathetic, which calms you down. When you're younger, these systems operate like a well-tuned seesaw. Excitement rises, and the body knows how to settle itself back into calm. But after 70, this balance becomes more fragile. Stress lingers longer. Recovery slows, and even pleasurable stimulation, when emotionally complex, can trigger a kind of shock wave through the nervous system. Here's what I mean. George lost his wife 6 years ago. He never dated again, but he also never fully grieved. Instead, he buried that ache in routines, walking, crossword puzzles, and occasionally, private moments of release. But those moments were no longer simple. They were tied to memory, to longing, to a life that once was. And so, instead of calming his body, his solo intimacy would sometimes send his heart racing. His breath would shorten, his chest would tighten, not from effort, but from an emotional cocktail of shame, sorrow, and unmet need. Physiologically, this is real. When emotions are unprocessed, especially grief or guilt, they trigger what's called vagal withdrawal, a disruption of the parasympathetic system that makes the heart work harder and the blood vessels constrict. Combine that with arousal, and you've created a kind of nervous system overload. That's why some older adults feel chest tightness, dizziness, or emotional crash after intimacy. Not because their bodies are broken, but because their emotions were never acknowledged. And yet, no one talks about this. No one says, be gentle with yourself. You're not just aging, you're carrying decades of memory, love, loss, and your body feels all of it. So what did George do? He started journaling. Not about the act itself, but about the emotions surrounding it, the memories, the longing, the guilt he didn't know he was holding on to. He also began practicing what's known as coherence breathing, slow, even breaths, 5 seconds in, 5 seconds out. He'd do this before and after any intimate moment, allowing his nervous system to reset, and he changed how he viewed those moments, from something mechanical or shameful to something tender, a way of staying connected, a way of honoring his body, not escaping it. The results? No more dizziness, no more rapid heartbeat, no more emotional crashes, because he didn't just adjust his timing or medication, he acknowledged his story. And that, in many ways, is the most healing thing anyone can do after 70. So if you've ever felt tired, sad, or off after self-pleasure, know this: you're not broken. You're simply carrying more than you realize, and the body remembers what the heart hasn't yet spoken. Now, as we prepare to enter the final part of this journey, I want to ask you a question, one that could change how you view the rest of your life. Are you touching your body as an act of connection or as an escape from loneliness? Because the answer will determine not just how your body reacts, but how your heart heals. Let's explore this final truth together. Final message: you're not broken. You're becoming so. Here we are, not with a list of do's and don'ts, not with shame or guilt, but with a deeper understanding of what it means to live inside a body that has carried you through 7, 8, even 9 decades. If you've made it this far, I want you to pause and acknowledge something extraordinary. You care. You care enough to ask questions most people avoid. You care enough to listen to your body instead of silencing it. And more importantly, you care enough to evolve, even now, because aging isn't just about decline, it's about refinement. Your heart may beat slower, but it beats wiser. Your skin may wrinkle, but it holds stories. And your desire, yes, your desire, is still part of you. Not something shameful, not something to be hidden, but something to be understood, honored, and guided with the care it deserves. George reminded me of something that day. After our final follow-up, he smiled and said, "You know, Doc, I used to feel like I was losing myself, but maybe I'm just learning a new version of me." And that's it. That's the heart of this whole message. You're not who you were at 40. You're not supposed to be, but you are still whole, still worthy, still allowed to explore pleasure, connection, and vitality on your terms, just with wisdom, just with kindness, just with care. So, if you take anything from this conversation, let it be this: listen to your timing. It matters more now than ever. Review your medications, not out of fear, but out of curiosity and clarity. And never underestimate the power of emotion. Your nervous system is not separate from your heart. It carries what your memories do not say out loud. And in those quiet moments, when you choose to be with yourself, let that be an act of peace, not punishment, an act of tenderness, not tension, an act of presence, not performance. And if you ever feel confused, worried, or alone in this journey, I want you to remember one thing. There are thousands, millions of others like you, wondering the same things, feeling the same questions deep inside their bones. You are not alone. You are never too old to ask, to learn, to heal. And this video, it's just the beginning. If this message touched something in you, please share it. Not just for me, but for someone else who might be sitting in silence, thinking they're the only one, because they're not, and neither are you. Take care of yourself, my friend, and I'll see you in the next chapter.